This is Life with Herpes, and this is episode 104. I'm Alexandra Harbushka, host of the show Life with Herpes, and I'm really excited to bring you a guest today. So our guest today, she is just a cornucopia of knowledge, and she's been in the alternative field for over 35 years, specializing in emotional release and helping you find your true identity and purpose. So really cool stuff. Beverly specializes in helping people look at their life and how it looks when you play roles such as victim or, being in that emotional trap, and how really that impacts your life. And really it can stunt your personal growth. And I'm sure many, many, many more things. So I'm really excited to bring you Beverly Zeimet. Welcome.
Oh, thank you so much for having me. This is a treat. It's perfect timing in my life where everything is going, and it was interesting how we met, and it's so awesome when the universe brings people together,
Totally.
at the perfect timing. And with technology, doesn't matter where you are, we can do stuff like this, and that's what's really great.
I know, it's so cool. So you are in Chicago right now.
Yes.
Yes, and I'm in Las Vegas. So it's, again, so cool to be all over the world, and I mean all over the United States for us, but we're able to be here and do this cool interview for the herpes community.
There we go.
Okay, so Beverly, so when I met so we were at a networking event in Las Vegas, and you asked me what I did, and I said, I have a community and online business and all that, and specifically towards herpes, people with herpes. And you were like, oh my gosh, I got to talk to you about this, because you're like, well, you went into all the emotional sides of why and where and how and what and how to heal, and all these really fascinating things that are so different from what we're taught in Western culture, with you take a pill and it'll cure it, or you take a pill and it suppresses it, or all these things, when it goes from the scientific reason to your whole vision and understanding of really the conception and the emotional side of having herpes. So I can't wait for you to just dive deep.
Dive deep. No pun intended, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, working with emotions and working with identity, what happens is a lot of times we get identified by not really by who we are, mm-hmm. but by what people relate us to. So, and sometimes we look at herpes, or even arthritis, or mm-hmm. any other kind of diseases and stuff. We look at that as being who we are when we're really not.
So true. That happens all the time. We now put this, it's like a tattoo on our forehead that says, I have herpes, or the Scarlet Letter.
Exactly. Yeah. Mm-hmm. And it's sad. It's still kind of done today. I mean, it's like so outdated, yet we still have the stigma of it, mm-hmm. And when you start really looking at how you lose your identity and what started, and you look at the emotional impact of what different discomforts in the body display around the element of emotions, and when you really start healing the emotions, mm-hmm. your life starts changing, right?
Yeah.
And it can be devastating when you first get diagnosed with whatever. It freaks you out. It's like, oh my God, what did I do to deserve this, right? And then it's like, oh, my life is over, And so what you're doing, sweetheart, is so beautiful. That you're able to open up the doors for these women that are like, oh, there really is life after herpes. And that is phenomenal. You can still have productive relationships and everything else. And it's not a scar. It's, it's not that scarlet letter. It's a dysfunction in your body. And when you start to understand the underlying current of it, and the vibration that it brings. So all emotions resonate at a different vibration. And we have what we call the chakra system, which is your level of spirituality and stuff. And so when you're in the physical world, this is when discomforts show up in the body. And a lot of the emotions behind that are fear, anger, grief, guilt,
Those
depression.
are definite. I know I definitely was
Shame.
all there. Yep.
Right? And the further you go down the ladder, the worse it gets. Right? And so when we can understand what causes that, and when you look at herpes, usually it's connected with the sexual disease, right? And unfortunately, there's more to it than that, because a lot of times it has to do with your personal sexuality and your sensuality. And there's a difference with that. Okay.
Ooh, explain.
Okay. Well, your sensuality is the power of who you are, whether you're male or female, right? That's your sensuality. How you respond, how you hold yourself, how you express yourself, the clothes that you wear. Do you, walk with your shoulders over? Do you stand up tall? How confident are you? So that sensuality has to do with how you trust and perceive your overall gender look, shall we say.
Okay.
Right? Sometimes if it gets out of whack, it can be attached to your ego, and then it becomes a show-off thing, right?
Right. We've all seen that.
Yeah. And a lot of times when it reaches that point, it's surface, because underlying then behind all of that is maybe sexual abuse. It may be not confident with who you are, but you're very egotistic and you really want to show off. And so you're determined to work out, make your exterior look good, but because you're not proud of what's going on inside. So you have to create that arena outside of yourself to make you appear to look good to everybody else, but inside you don't look good to yourself. So you're really living a facade. You're living a lie. You're in conflict with yourself, and so when you're not out in the arena of people, you're at home hiding and in depression and in shame and in guilt, and even have suicidal tendencies and things like that, right? So it's just kind of drives you down. And I mean, you look at some of these famous people, some of these actors, and they end up getting involved with drugs, or they even end up committing suicide, and Robin Williams, I mean, look at this beautiful man. Nobody really knew that he fought depression his entire life, because he was so outgoing, and he was a comedian, and he had everything going for him, right? And all of a sudden, wow, here he is, and he commits suicide, and it's like, whoa, the whole world was like in shock. But he had no one he could really talk to, and so he had an exterior that he had to keep up. He had to keep this facade up because he had created this, and everybody loved him for that, but nobody really knew who the real Robin Williams was. Right. And the inner conflict got so bad that he just couldn't deal with it anymore. And I'll tell you a little story about me. I'll make it short. I fought depression most of my life, and I fought to seek out acceptance, and I always wanted the acceptance from my dad. And I was my dad's son. I really grew up as a tomboy until my brothers came along, right? So I was always in that competitive mode. And you perceive things different as a child as you do as an adult. Of course. And so I was a very strong extrovert until I went to school and got picked on because I was small and everything. So then I kind of went introvert. But I was always fighting, and I was just so filled with anger. It was when I was about, how old was I? 24. And I woke up one day, and it's like, well, it wasn't just one day. It had been growing, it had been working at it. And it was like, I really had no identity. And I was identified by being, my kids' mother, or I was so-and-so's husband, wife, and stuff like this. Right. And it's like, wait a minute, who am I? What's my purpose for being here? And I had 3 young children, all under the age of 5. Okay. Whoa. And I started entertaining the idea of suicide because I had no purpose. I was in a marriage that there was no love. I didn't want to be. I was in Iowa. I didn't like it there. I wanted to get out of there. I just didn't see any way out. You know, I mean, it's just like my whole world was caving in on me because I had no purpose and no identity. Right. And so I took off one night. I put my kids to bed and their dad was there. So I took off walking. Because back in the 70s, there was no self-help books. There was nobody to talk to. There was, you know, there was just nobody around. There was, you just dealt with it, right? And, well, you know what? There had to be more than dealing with it. So my anger started coming out that night. I was angry at God. And let me tell you, I definitely gave him a piece of my mind. On my walk, and I was yelling out loud. I mean, I'm down gravel roads walking, right? I mean, I'm in the middle of nowhere. So the only thing that was listening were the ears of corn, you know? But, you know, after I got done blasting, you know, God, then I started really ripping into my dad, into my mother, into my siblings, which I had 10 of. You know, it was just everybody, you know, I blamed everything that was wrong in my life on everybody else. Right. And, you know, so basically I had decided I was going to check out, and it's just now I just need to figure out when and how. And that was kind of why I went on my walk. And, after I kind of quieted down and I wasn't yelling anymore and I'm just kind of walking in thought, I hear this inner voice and it says, "Are you done?" Oh, that pissed me off. Right? So I started yelling again. Yeah. And I was like, no. And I just started just yelling and screaming again. And then I went into this sobbing. I cried like I've never cried in my entire life. I mean, I was crying so hard I couldn't even hardly breathe. So I'm gasping for air. That's how hard I was crying. And through that, I heard the voice again that says, "Are you done?" And I said, yes. I went out. And I surrendered. And I said, I want out. And they said, okay, we just have one question for you. And I said, that would be what? Is who's going to take care of your kids? And oh my gosh, it just slapped me right back into reality. Like instantly, like, what? You know? And it's like, oh, I never thought about that. You know, and it's like, oh man, now what the hell am I going to do? Right? Because I can't check out, right? Yeah. And it's like, all right, then let's make a deal. So that's where I was. Wow. And it's like, okay, I will take care of my kids. I will be there for them to grow up, but I'm not going to let them grow up in a loveless marriage. I'm not going to let them grow up in Iowa where it's a dead end. You know, all these things. It's like, I need an identity. I need to know who I am. I need to know who my purpose is, because I'm more than just my kids' mother. Right? And so I don't know who to talk to. I don't know who you are, this voice, right? It's like, I need focus and I need guidance and I need you to show me the way. And they did. It did. You know, later in life, I come to know that voice is my higher self. And it, you know, that voice and really getting in touch with who you are. And that's why I work so closely with emotions and identity. You know, so regardless of what you got going on, whether it's the angers or whether it's your sexuality, whether it's, you know, it doesn't matter, right? It still goes into the depth and where did that begin, you know, and mine started at a very early age when I was in competition, you know, and it just kept building till it reached this point. So it's like, okay, I really need to get my act together if I'm going to be taking care of my kids, because I'm the one that's going to have to make sure they have a roof over their head and they have food in their belly and they got clothes on their back, right?
Right. They go to school. They yeah.
Exactly. And so it took me about 5 years really to get my act together. And I started, I wanted to be a stay-at-home mom because I wanted to give them that time. So what could I do from home? So I started writing for 5 different local newspapers, which started my writing career. Voila, and now I'm an author, you know, whoever would have thought, you know. And then I started pumping gas at one of the local gas stations, you know, and I was bored, you know. It's like, because there was like 100 people in that town, if there were that many, right? Counting dogs and cats, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah. And it's like, okay, well, maybe I'll start doing oil changes. I wanted something to do. So I started getting creative. And then I got offered a position at a parts store.
Mm-hmm.
And so then I started working there in the fall when all three of my kids were in school.
Mm-hmm.
And that really gave me the taste of freedom and an income that, you know what, I can support my kids and I can support myself. So a year and a half working there, I said, you know what, my kids are going to be out of school. I'm moving. And it's like, okay, where am I going to go? I figured I'd go to either Montana, Wyoming, or Colorado. I was going west. Okay. And my older sister lived in Colorado, and she said, well, why don't you come out, stay with me, and get on your feet till you get your own place. And it's like, okay, I'm moving to Colorado.
Yep.
School got out. I packed the kids in the car, and we took what we had, and that was it. And I never looked back.
Wow.
And yeah. And so after about a year being out there, I had my own business. I was in a 6-figure income. I had 3 people working with me. I sold sandpaper to body shops. You know, who would have ever thunk? I know, yeah?
Yeah.
And, you know, so all of this was still a part of finding my identity. And then I started meeting people who could actually talk to me about what I was doing because of the energy work that I was doing. I knew mind over matter. I had cured myself of migraine headaches through mind over matter. Yeah, again, this was that little voice that was telling me, because these headaches were bad. I mean, they were so bad. And it's like, okay, it's mind over matter. And I really didn't understand what that was. But if I could think that they weren't going to happen, they wouldn't. And I conquered it. And so after moving to Denver and meeting people who were in that energy healing type of work, they told me what, you know, they shared with me what I was doing. And then I really got a taste of it. And I went to Silva Mind Control. And that was the beginning of the end. Oh my gosh, that just opened the doors to so many things with energy healing work. And that's when I really started understanding the emotion behind any discomfort that's going on in the body. So when you talk about the discomfort around, you know, herpes, and you talk about the sexuality, you know, I've known to come that a lot of people that do suffer from herpes have had some type of sexual abuse, whether it was verbally sexual, whether it was actual touching, whether it was actual rape or anything like that, because they feel so much shame. Mm-hmm. And shame is the lowest vibration emotion that there is. Mm-hmm. And that's usually when shame takes over, suicide is the next level.
Interesting. Wow.
Yeah.
I had no idea.
Yeah. And so we have a tendency to bounce back and forth from victim to martyr, and that's those 3 lower chakras. And then when we reach the point where we want to either run or fight, that's the base chakra, which is right there where the sexual organs are, mm-hmm. right? And again, when you look at what is your sexuality all about, that's also reproduction.
Right.
Right? And so why would you want to bring someone into the world if you're not comfortable, you know, with your own sexuality? And then you've got to take care of this child and, you know, everything else. So there's so many things that play into effect. You know, and it's interesting, a lot of sexual abuse actually is done by family members.
Wow.
You know, as a child, it's an act, and it never really becomes anything that's a violation until you get past the age of reasoning, and all of a sudden there's all this talk about sexual abuse and about this, and the descriptions are out there, and you hear the media talk about it, and you hear other people talking about it, and then all of a sudden it's like, oh my God, that happened to me. Oh, that happened to me. And then you start questioning yourself. It's like, well, what, was I bad? what was wrong with me? Why did this happen? Because how people talk about sexual abuse as being such a bad thing and a destructive thing and a hateful thing, and all of the stuff that goes with it, the stigma.
Right.
So it never really became anything but an act, and it was in passing. The memory of it was in your cell, but it never really became any kind of destruction until you started hearing other people talking about it in the media, and you start reading about it, and then your story changes.
Right.
Your story changes, right?
Interesting. Yes.
Yeah. And then you try to get in a relationship, and then if touching is starting to happen, and that happened to be where your abuse was, then it's like you go into denial of it, and you wonder why you don't want anybody touching you in that location. You wonder why you don't want to allow yourself to feel sensual, because if you do, it brings back that memory. I was a product of sexual abuse in the Catholic Church, actually. And it was something that I had buried, and it came out when I started doing a lot of this work, a lot of the emotional clearing and the emotional healing work. When it came out, oh my gosh. And when it came out, the anger that I felt, I was so angry, right? And it helped me to understand why I never really allowed myself, I never gave myself permission to have orgasm or to even feel anything when I had sexual relations, is because when that was happening,
you had to shut it down.
I left my body. I didn't feel anything. I was not going to give them the pleasure of knowing that there was a stimulation or anything going on. And I just learned how to just leave my body. And so they were just, whatever they did, right? So it was totally nothing that even fazed me at that point. And so I didn't really harbor, some of the emotions that way, other than the anger. I was so angry.
Like you said, you didn't realize it until later.
Exactly.
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah. So when you start uncovering a lot of the emotion around what's going on, and that's where my expertise is, because I can see it. I've experienced myself, so you just kind of know what to look for. And I am psychically intuitive, that I can just go like scan the body and just go right there. And I can tell the age it started. And, you don't even have to regurgitate it. The techniques that I've been able to develop over the years to disconnect and disassociate with that underlying emotional connection, you can eliminate all of that in 60 seconds or less by utilizing and incorporating the techniques that I teach. And it's amazing. It's just amazing. And I don't want to see the same people over and over and over. I want to give them the tools and the way to begin recognizing it in themselves. And if they reach a plateau and they come back and say, hey, okay, I'm ready to go to the next level, but I'm stuck here, it's great. Yeah. And you can take them to that next level. That's what brings joy and gratitude into my life. That's fulfilling to me, to watch people grow out of that and their lives just change. And it's been interesting. My book has only been out for a couple of months. And
tell us about the book.
It's called, let me show it to you here. It's called The Power Formula. Okay. And it's the heart-mind connection, right? And basically, it kind of talks about some of the things that we talked about already. So I go into detail on some of the emotions, and you can read what those emotions are and see if you can relate to that. And I actually show you in the book 2 different techniques that you can utilize to start your own clearing, start releasing, start finding your identity.
That's what we need.
Yeah. And I'm an identity revelation coach, if you want to call me that, right? I help you to do that, and I can really start walking you through and really getting you on a process of constant clearing. When I started doing my clearing, I didn't have these shortcuts. So it took me a lot longer to go through what I did, but I went through all of these experiences so that I could come to the arena that I'm in to help you with these shortcuts. So there's no regurgitation. You don't have to relive or re-experience anything. If you know of an event, you recognize an event, boom, you go right to the event and you get all the emotions in one shot, not just one emotion. Is amazing. Because what we don't realize is those emotions are controlling more than just that event, you know. So your anger or your fear or your guilt, you know, goes into any event that you felt guilt. And, you know, you'll never really uncover the whole story, because what you store in your cell memory is only 5% yours. 5%.
What's the 95?
Everybody else's stuff.
Oh.
Because all thought is magnetic. So how many times have you sat with one of your girlfriends because you were really upset with your boyfriend, you know, and you're just bashing, you're both bashing, you know, and all this emotional stuff's coming up, right?
Right.
And all this also, yeah, I remember when I was like 10 years old and this happened, you know, and da-da-da, you know, all of this stuff, right? And all of a sudden you relate to their situation, they relate to your situation, and you're attaching to it because it's familiar.
So it
know,
sticks.
Yep. And so it just keeps adding to it and adding to it. You watch a movie. How many times you watch a movie and something happens and you're crying because you relate to their pain? Now you just attach to the pain in the movie. Right? How many times you read a book and cried during a book? Right? The same thing. So it's all around us. It's all around us. And I'm sure some of your listeners out there today could kind of relate to what my story is. And then they're going to attach to that. I don't want you to attach to that, you know. So contact me. You want to detach from all that, right? But because it's magnetic, we become a part of that, and we allow it to become a part of us.
Fascinating.
Yeah. So when you think you have to know exactly what it was and where it got started, you don't. You will never find it. And I just need to know why. I just need to know why. You'll never, ever get that answer. You just won't. And the sooner you really grasp that, the sooner you can be free of it.
Wow. Yeah. So with herpes, can you cure herpes with your mind over matter?
Yes, you can.
No.
Yeah. Yeah. My belief is that what the mind can conceive and believe, it can achieve. Okay. And there's been spontaneous healings with cancers, tumors, people on their deathbed that all of a sudden they come out of it and their bodies just begin healing and they don't know why. There's been, I mean, you name it, it can be backtracked. And again, when you're in that process, that mind over matter and that belief, you can speed up that belief by moving into what the emotional aspect of your situation is.
Interesting.
Right? And I would love to be a part of anybody's journey out there that's interested. And, you know, so people can get a hold of me, you know, and contact me and we can do a consultation. If we're a fit, great. If we're not, great. And if people want to get the book and get an idea of who I am and what it's all about, you know, that's probably a good place to start, because it'll start opening some things on a private, you know, area. Because, you know, it's a personal thing. Herpes is a personal thing. Right? You know, and so it's kind of behind the scenes.
It is. And what was so interesting how you were saying earlier, and I wanted to relate back. I love how that bird's singing, by the way.
Oh, yeah.
It sounds so beautiful. So I'm so distracted with the bird. But it was so interesting.
Quiet bird.
It was so interesting. You were saying that you don't realize that it's a problem until you start hearing about the shame. So you were using the example of sexual abuse, but I think that's the exact same thing with herpes, right? It's just a skin disease. It's no big deal.
Exactly.
It's
Right.
no big deal whatsoever. It's the shame that everybody else puts on it. And then you're
Right.
like, how did I get into this?
Yeah.
I
Why
Why
me?
me? Why
Yeah.
me? Why not the
Yeah.
person next door or the person down the street or someone else?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. And then
Right.
who did this to me? Right?
Right. Who did this? Why did I get it and why didn't someone else
Somebody
get
else
it?
get it.
Yeah.
Right.
Or why, and in a lot of people's situations in their relationships, they're like, why is it I slept with the same person, or like different boyfriend, like,
Yeah.
and like, why is it that she got it or I got it and she didn't? Or
Uh-huh.
how do you, right? Like, how do
Well,
you,
yeah, a lot of that is your mindset and the
Mhm.
different fears that you incorporate. Let me share a story with you that happened
Yeah.
to me. Um, I was very fertile. I had sex 3 times and I had 3 kids. It's like, whoa, done with this? It's like, woo, I'm not going there. My mother had 11 of us. I'm not following in that footsteps, right?
Yeah.
It's like, right? And so I did have my tubes tied.
Uh-huh.
But I still had the fear of getting pregnant. It was so strong that if I had sex means I was going to get pregnant, right? Because obviously that happened. And it happened it happened 3 times and I was done with it. Well, I get involved with a gentleman who actually had hepatitis C when he was 16.
Mm-hmm.
He spent a year and a half over in Vietnam exposed to Agent Orange. So he was shooting blanks all the way. So I'm involved with someone shooting blanks, yet my fear of getting pregnant was still strong. I was in a man's business because I was selling sandpaper to body shops. I was the only woman out there in this whole business and still trying to prove my identity that I was a boy, not a girl, right? And right? So I really smashed my femininity. So it was probably the mid 80s and all of a sudden I find myself in this emotional roller coaster. And so I'm talking with my chiropractor because he was also an energy healer and stuff, right? And he was one of the guys that was actually sharing with me and telling me some of the stuff that I was doing. And I asked him, I said, okay, you do all kinds of adjustments for different emotional things and all this kind of stuff. So what can you do for this, right? And then he asked me when the last time I had a pap smear, right? And I said, well, when I had my daughter. So it was a lot of years, right? And so I went to his wife's gynecologist and checked it out, and the guy was a real jerk. Well, he tells me I have fibroid tumors. Oh my gosh, I hear that word, and I'm like, what? What me? What does this mean? I was freaking out, and he never explained to me what that was. So I ended up conversing with my sister-in-law because she was more in that health end of it, and I was more in just the energy healing of it. So this was before I really knew my body from that direction. And so she explained to me what fibroid tumors were and that a lot of women get it. And, so the whole story. Because I told him, I said, well, the next time I come back, I won't have it. They will be gone. He found a lump in my breast, and he put the fear in me. He really did. And along with my fear was anger. It's like, because the guy was a real jerk. I won't tell you the other part of the story because he almost got a foot in his mouth. Oh. But anyway, so after I understood what it was and I came back down to earth, then I talked with one of the body shop owners was a metaphysical doctor. And so I had a discussion with him and he shared with me about my femininity, and all of this was happening at the same time because all of a sudden I was starting to wear different clothing that looked more like girl clothing instead of boy clothing, and just different things, right? So my feminine side was really trying to escape, and so we had a really, really deep, intense talk about that. So I had a moment with myself, and I can really beat myself up, trust me. I really can beat the hell out of myself. And so I allowed my feminine side to come back. And it was a whole process. And I take a lot of my clients through this process to balance the feminine and the masculine side. And that's how you really become whole in your identity.
Hmm.
So I had a conversation with these fibroid tumors. And guess what?
They went away.
Well, they didn't go away, but I made a deal with them. I said, you know what? If for whatever reason you're here and you're looking at this vessel for your existence, you can exist if this is what the game is, and not monkey with my emotions. There's no hormone imbalance, there's nothing like that. So if you're going to exist on the planet here in this body for whatever reason until it's fulfilled, great. But if you mess with my emotions and my hormones and everything, boom, you're getting cut out. So there's the deal. Well, I had these fibroids for like 10 years, never had another bout with emotional upset of any kind, no hormonal imbalance, anything. Never went through menopause, nothing like that, right? Because, I worked a lot with the emotions on that too.
Mm-hmm.
10 years went by and I had another conversation with these fibroids, and it was time for them to go, and they left.
Wow.
So you ask me, can herpes do this? I would say yes.
Wow.
Yes.
We have to figure this. Okay, so everybody, we all need to call Beverly. And we need to talk to our herpes, and we need to make a deal. I'm sure there's much more to it than just making a deal, but I really want to recommend everybody calls. Well, Beverly, what's the best way that people reach out to you?
Probably the best way to do is to send me a text message.
Okay.
And let me know that you came from this, and we'll do a consultation, and I'll kind of walk through it a little bit. And if there's a huge demand, what I'll do is I will create a video series
mm-hmm.
and walk you through everything that needs to be done, and then we'll just market it out there, and people can just get it, do it in their home. If they have questions or something like that, then they can make contact with me. If we need to take go a little bit further, we can do that.
Love it.
So yeah, so the best thing to do would be to text me. Let's set up a consultation time and see if we can be a fit for one another. Yeah.
Oh, I love it. So I will put Beverly's information in the show notes, or if you're watching this on YouTube, I'll put it in the description. So I'll have it available for you guys so you can reach out to Beverly. And also I want you to buy her book, of course, right? I'm going to go buy it. And read it. And if this is something that interests you, not forcing you to buy it, of course, but if it's something that interests you and you want to get going in it and learn how to begin healing yourself and really understanding the background into it, I highly recommend you reach out to Beverly. And can we get that on Amazon?
Actually, you can order it directly from me. It'll probably come faster.
Okay. So I'll put that. What's your website?
It's beverlyz.studio/the power formula.
Okay. I will put that in the show notes as well. So we all can reach out to Beverly.
Yeah, that's a link that'll go directly to PayPal. You just put it in there, your address and everything. And then when I get back to Denver on Saturday night, who's there, whoever bought the book or whatever, then I'll autograph it for you, and we'll put it in the mail, and it's free shipping. I'll put it in the mail, and then I'll get all that stuff in the mail on Monday. So
I love it. Thank you so much, Beverly, for joining us, and the bird in the background, which I love. It was so beautiful. I just want to listen to it. I want to speak.
Oh, it's so nice sitting out here. It's still and it's just, the air is so fresh, and it's nice. Yeah, it's not, everything is so green out here in Chicago right now. And yeah, it's beautiful. It's beautiful.
Well, thank you for joining us today and sharing your stories and being vulnerable and opening up. And obviously, those are some pretty deep stories that you shared, but I know other people in the community that are listening will totally relate. And it's probably putting a lot of ahas together for people.
Yeah. I am a firm believer like I said, what the mind, because the mind is so powerful, and we set our own limitations.
Always.
So what the mind can conceive and believe, it can achieve. So you have to ask yourself, how bad do you want it?
Mm.
Right? What are you willing to give up to gain?
I love it.
Yeah. And so please contact me. You got my phone number, and so just text me, and we'll set up some consultations and just take it from there.
Perfect. Thanks so much, Beverly.
Well, thank you for having me on. This is exciting. I love it.
I love it.
I love it. I'll see you the next time I get to Vegas, okay?
Perfect.
All righty.